quite overwhelmed by that introduction. Goodness me. I kept looking around to see who he's talking about. Goodness, so many years. When the chaplain asked me if I would consider speaking in chapel tonight, I looked back through my file of talks and found that the last time I spoke in chapel was in 2004, a time when most of you students were in elementary school, worrying about long division. And now you're worrying about college and majors and scholarships and all that goes with it, and anticipating graduation from St. Andrews with the whole world opening up before you. Some of you are quite sure what you want to do. Others of you haven't a clue. You're waiting to see what the world will bring, to see what you can make of your abilities and what choices you will make. And I am here to urge you not to worry about what you will decide to do with your life. It may seem urgent now. What will I do? What will I do? I need to decide now. But really, you don't. I am 76, and I changed vocational goals at least 6 times before I was 30. And believe me, change does not stop. It all began when I, like you, was in high school. My father was a public school superintendent. He had decided what I should be. Was I consulted? No. He was a professional educator. He knew better than I did at the age of 17 in 1953. He had decided that I should be a home economist. What's that? Well, I could teach sewing and cooking. But my father had already lined up a job for me with Kraft Foods, starting in their test kitchens. How many different ways can you cook with Velveeta? I had my doubts about this. But who argues with the superintendent of schools when he is your father? And then my father died suddenly halfway through my senior year in high school. Now my dying father's wish became law. I enrolled at the University of Illinois, majoring in home economics. But after the first semester, I said to my mother, "Look, I can do this. I can study home economics. I earn straight A's, but I do not like it, and I'm going to change my major to history." My mother was very upset. It was your dying father's wish. He knew better than you. And floods of tears. But I persevered and graduated with a degree in history. And I went on to graduate school in history at Cornell University. So far, so good. But then I discovered that the academic world wasn't falling all over itself to hire me. I finally found a job teaching Western Civ, history of Western civilization, at Drake University in Des Moines, Iowa. And then a door opened. I went on a retreat for Episcopalian students and faculty teaching at the university. I knew that the retreat leader was a member of an Episcopal religious community that had a mission in West Africa, in Liberia. At the end of the retreat, I asked the leader if the school in Africa ever needed teachers. "Well, yes," he said, "but don't write me, I'll write you." Okay, I thought, so much for that idea. Then a few months later, I received a phone call. "Hello, is that Nancy?" Do you still want to go to Africa? You're kidding, I said. I'm not making jokes, said the retreat leader. Do you want to go to Africa or not? I took a deep breath and said, yes. Fine, he said briskly. When can you leave? A week after I had graded my last exam, I was on my way. My younger sister told me later that my mother wept for a solid week. Nan will disappear in the jungle. And we'll never see her again. Well, as you can see, I didn't. But I also didn't go to work for Velveeta. I learned to take a chance, to say yes to new opportunities. Chance favors the prepared mind. I had taken the first step off the beaten track, the safe and sure career path. I was 23. I had committed to living in the jungle for 2 years with no vacation, to teaching at a high school where there were no substitute teachers. If you got sick, the classes were untaught. There were few books and no library. There was no hot water. It had to be boiled on a wood stove, after which it was carried by buckets, after it was carried to the house by buckets from a nearby stream. Cooking was done on the same wood stove. All drinking water had to be filtered. The only electricity was provided by a diesel-powered generator which ran for 3 hours at night so that students could do homework. The teachers' cabins all had oil lamps. The school was beyond the end of the road. During the rainy season, only four-wheel drive Land Rovers could get through because all the roads were unpaved. Every classroom had one side open, the side away from the prevailing winds. In a corner of each classroom leaned a long forked stick. I was told that if a snake came round a corner, a student would catch it with the forked stick and release it back in the jungle. There were pythons, black mambas, and boa constrictors. Sometimes I saw them. The students were much quicker and caught the snakes. I had jumped on the desk. There weren't any black mambas in Illinois. I used some of my home economics experience. We got U.S. government surplus flour, which no one knew how to use. Wheat does not grow in the tropical jungles. I set off for some USDA pamphlets on how to build beehive ovens. The local farmers built them for me out of mud bricks. For yeast, I used the dregs of palm wine, which is the naturally yeasty sap of the palm tree. After much trial and error, we had yeast bread. And so we improvised. And everyone improvised. In the hospital, the doctors and nurses used ants as sutures. Carnivorous ants are endemic in the tropics. They're just everywhere. During an operation, a nurse would put an ant over a wound. As it bit, the nurse would nip off the head just at the neck, preserving the bite and making a stitch. And that's the way we sutured wounds. At weekends, we teachers would walk to distant villages on trails to give literacy training to adults. We would arrive hot and tired, ready for a shower. In the villages, everyone bathed at a common enclosure called a bath fence. Big flat stones made the floor. The wall was a semicircular mud brick fence topped with a layer of palm fronds. For privacy, we visiting teachers were allowed first use of the fence. The first evening, I was happily sluicing down when I thought that the fence looked a bit peculiar. Between the top row of bricks and the palm fronds was a row of, could it be, eyeballs? It could be, and was. In West African tribal lore, people in the ghost world, the spirit world, have white skins. All the small children in the village were lined up to see if the two white teachers were ghosts or not. Were our arms and legs sewn onto our clothes? Or were our whole bodies white, and we were therefore ghosts? I showed no surprise. I went ahead and took my shower. The children learned their first lesson about white bodies. In the villages, adults learned their ABCs at weekends. In the school village where I lived and taught during the week, students began first grade when they were 12 years old enough to work on a farm and earn their school fees. School fees, board and room for a year, were 6 bags of rice and 2 gallons of palm oil. You carried your fees with you when you enrolled. The future of the country, as in so much of the rest of the world, was with its schools. I remember a boy in the 10th grade who had a natural air of leadership, of command. And I asked, who was Patrick's father? I was told that he was the chief witch doctor of a neighboring tribe, and that when Patrick walked in to begin school, all his father's wives followed him, weeping and tearing off their headscarves. They knew that Patrick had chosen the new way, that of Western education, rather than the old way of traditional tribalism. The new way, where the rainbow is not made by exhaling frogs, but by refraction of light, where the way to live in peace is by loving your neighbor as yourself, rather than by killing those with a different tribal totem. And so, class after class, our students went on to Covington College and the University of Liberia and became leaders of their country. And what of me? What of the child of the Midwest? What did I learn? I think the first thing I learned was how much one can live without and be happy. I learned to take new steps, to try something I had not done before. I learned how much I didn't know. I learned to take chances, to say yes to new opportunities. I learned that chance favors the prepared mind. I learned to walk everywhere. I learned to play bridge and to read by the light of an oil lamp and to write out all assignments in longhand. I learned to make blackboard chalk by kneading by hand clay from a termite mound for glue with white clay for color. And then you would make the sticks and put them out in the sun to dry. And there's your chalk. I learned to listen to the old stories that people told before civilization. I learned to value both children's and adults' determination to learn. I learned to nurture a student's curiosity. I learned to listen to their hopes, their dreams, their fears, their loves, their goals, and to take each person seriously. I learned to value each student as a singular child of God, of infinite worth. And I learned to listen to God for hints and clues as to what I should do with my life. I learned that sometimes the advice is clear. Do you want to go to Africa? Choose now. But that most times God speaks through the small decisions, the everyday choices that we make. We must listen with a prepared mind and take the chances that are offered to us. I came back to the USA after 2 years, determined to teach and to learn as though my life depended on it, which it did. Thanks be to God.